What if the life that you dream of isn't out of reach? It just requires more preparation than you expected. If you've ever looked at another woman's life and thought, now she's probably had advantages I didn't, then today's episode will challenge that lie at its root. You'll hear a true story of transformation. You'll learn why confidence is built, not bestowed. And you'll be reminded that God can redeem any beginning when you're willing to grow. Because today we're talking about the real journey from dreaming to wearing the crown, using powerful lessons from the pageant world, My Fair Lady, and faith-filled wisdom inspired by Demi Lee Thibault. We're going to unpack why success isn't about privilege, beauty, or comparison. It's about identity, discipline, and doing the work when no one is watching. So stay tuned. Hey there, beautiful dreamer. What if I told you that it truly was possible for every one of us to walk out our princess-like dreams, but the journey toward wearing the crown is far more intense than most of us could imagine. Oh, we all love the highlight reel, the tiara moment, the applause, the look what God did in my life testimony. But very few people talk about the long journey that leads to the throne room. Especially when we feel like we're getting close and the people we thought supported us, believed in us, begin to fall away. And then there's the lonely walk down a long hallway without any fanfare. It's quiet, it's humbling, and it requires way more grit than glitter. You may be wondering how I know all of this. Well, there was a time in my former life, and I truly feel like I've lived several lifetimes at this point, when I served as the co-director of a local pageant that trained and equipped young women to compete in the Miss USA system. What fascinated me the most wasn't the gowns or the crowns. It was watching character of these women either rise or crumble under the unexpected pressure. Inevitably, there would always be a few young ladies, often encouraged by very overzealous parents, who had already been told they alone were destined for the crown. And to be fair, many of them had a solid foundation: beauty, poise, talent, and presence. But what I quickly learned is that raw potential only gets you so far. The women who experienced the most success weren't always the most naturally gifted. They were the ones who were teachable, the ones who were hungry to grow, the ones who didn't assume they had already arrived. Sometimes the lies we're believing in our head aren't always negative. Sometimes they tell us we don't have to try anymore. But if we weren't meant to keep growing and becoming the best version of ourselves, then why are we still here? It doesn't matter what side of the tracks you're born on. I've seen both sides, either out of pride or defeat, sit out and just quit trying. Like, this is it? This is all that God has for your life? Well, if that's you, then I'm so glad you're here, because God has so much more for you. So let's go. As a little inspiration today, I'm going to share about one young woman in particular that signed up for the pageant that I will never forget, because she was stunning. The kind of beauty that makes you assume life must have been kind to her. And if we're honest, isn't that exactly how we women often judge one another? We look at the external appearance and we quietly think, it must be nice. It must be nice to be born with those gifts, those advantages, that confidence. But scripture reminds us in 1 Samuel 16:7, man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. And most of the time, we have no idea what that other woman has walked through, what she survived, or what she's still silently battling. And this young woman, she came from a background with absolutely no privilege, no access, and no roadmap. Her environment, unfortunately, had shaped her far more than her education ever had. You could hear it in her speech, see it in her posture, and feel it in her hesitation. And yet, when she walked into our office, she had stars in her eyes. She carried a dream that was bigger than her current reality. And she was willing to work for it. So work we did. And because I still believe deeply in the American dream, and even more than that, I believe in the kingdom principle that with God, there's always more possible than your beginnings suggest. If you knew the details of my own story, where I was born and where I came from, you might be tempted to put limits on what I could become. But limits dissolve when faith and obedience enter the picture. Matthew 19:26 practically shouts, with man, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. And my life has been a true-to-life fairy tale testament to that. And I can't help but want that same feeling for every woman I come into contact with. Because if it happened for me, it can happen for you. I was talking with my sister recently, and she reminded me that My Fair Lady has always been my favorite movie. And then it hit me. It's because that story symbolizes something timeless for women everywhere. What you're born into, and even what you lack in education or opportunity, does not have to determine your future. Because there are choices you can make. There are opportunities that you can seize. And there's a life that you were created to live. And you, beautiful dreamer, are allowed to pursue it. And I, for one, want to be beside you as you do, cheering you on. But let's be clear, it's not easy. One of my favorite scenes from My Fair Lady, besides the ball where Eliza is mistaken for Hungarian royalty, of course, is the moment that she completely breaks down in frustration. Because it was hard. Because transformation is exhausting. And growth stretches you. Reinvention, it requires humility. And that's the part we forget. Other people don't have it easier. They've just decided to be disciplined. They've decided to do the work when no one is clapping. This is something that Demi Lee Thibault talks about so beautifully from her real life and pageant experience. That true confidence doesn't come from the crown. It comes from knowing who you are before you ever wear it. She emphasizes that humility, service, and character are what actually sustains success. A title can be given, but identity must be pursued. Now, one of my favorite areas to work with the pageant participants in was interview skills. In many ways, it reminded me of Professor Higgins teaching young women how to walk and talk and act like a lady, carrying themselves with confidence and grace. And watching that young woman transform was incredible. She showed up every day believing that if she set the goal and accomplished what we'd encouraged her to do, she would get the results she believed were possible. I just wish everyone I coach had her trust and faith to invest the time and energy it took to take them to where they want to go, to get them to their very own happily ever after. She believed she could, and her hard work paid off. Soon, her external beauty was matched by her ability to articulate her thoughts, to own her story, and to sit in any room answering challenging questions without shrinking back. And the payoff? She became a finalist at Miss Texas USA that year. So when I tell you I believe all things are possible, I want you to know that I'm not speaking in cliches. I'm actually speaking from experience. But I will also tell you this. There will be work involved. And the very first step is silencing the lie that other people have some advantage that you don't. Because comparison will keep you convinced that you're disqualified before you ever begin. Eliza Doolittle could have believed that lie. She could have stayed exactly where she was, but instead, she chose to believe the possibilities that she could become the woman she saw in her dreams. Scripture says, do you see someone skilled in their work? They will stand before kings. Skill is built. Confidence is cultivated. But growth, it's intentional. So, here's our timeless truth for today. If the crown fits, wear it. But just remember, crowns are worn by women who were willing to be shaped long before they were celebrated. And that, my friend, is where real royalty is formed. Thank you so much for joining me today. Please like and share this episode with a friend. And I pray this inspired you to pursue the dream you once believed was impossible because of where your story began. In fact, today's challenge is to write out that dream and just one action step that it would take to help you believe that it can become a possibility in your life. Maybe that one action step is booking a coaching session with me to help you rewrite your story and finally believe that happily ever after isn't a lie.